The fabric between realities tears as an arrogant genius stumbles into a galaxy ruled by mystical forces he refuses to believe in. Rick Sanchez, armed with science and cynicism, finds himself hunted by Darth Vader, who senses the power to reach beyond their universe in Rick's portal technology. As Imperial forces close in, Rick must confront an uncomfortable truth. What if the Force isn't just superstition, but something his science cannot explain? What happens when the smartest man in the multiverse discovers that some powers transcend even his understanding? The dimensional rift tore open above Coruscant like a wound in the night sky. Imperial citizens stared upward as the small craft tumbled through, trailing green energy and emitting a sound unlike any sublight drive. The ship crashed into the mid-levels of the endless cityscape, carving a path of destruction through several sky bridges before coming to rest in a maintenance bay. Stormtroopers surrounded the wreckage within. Minutes, blasters trained on the smoking hull. The craft bore no markings of the rebellion, no familiar design of any known system. As the entry hatch burst outward, the soldiers tensed. A thin man with wild blue-gray hair emerged, stumbling and clutching a strange device. He took a swig from a flask, wiped his mouth with his sleeve, and glared at the troopers through bloodshot eyes. Great, white-armored fascists, that narrows it down to about 63 dimensions. He belched loudly, the sound echoing in the sudden silence. So which backwater reality is this? Commander Various stepped forward, his voice filtered through his helmet. You are trespassing in a restricted Imperial zone. Surrender your weapons and identify yourself. The stranger's eyes narrowed as he processed the words. His gaze darted from the Imperial insignias to the architecture of Coruscant visible beyond the landing bay. Imperial, over-designed evil aesthetic, energy weapons. He sniffed the air. And that's definitely the smell of 1,000 species crammed into one ecumenopolis. His face contorted into a grimace of realization. Oh, you have got to be kidding me. I'm in the Star Wars universe, aren't I? Before Commander Various could respond, the stranger raised what appeared to be a crude blaster. A green portal opened in the air beside him. The stormtroopers opened fire, but the man had already rolled through the shimmering gateway. It closed with a pop of displaced air, leaving the Imperial forces staring at empty space. Deep in the Imperial Palace, Darth Vader stood motionless before a large viewport. The Dark Lord had felt a disturbance unlike any he had experienced before. Not the familiar ripple of a Force-sensitive being revealed, nor the cold touch of his master's presence. This was something outside the pattern, a discordant note in the symphony of destiny. He turned as an officer approached and knelt. Lord Vader, we've had a security breach in Sector 9. An unidentified craft of unknown origin. The pilot escaped using some form of teleportation technology. Teleportation? Vader's mechanical breathing filled the pause. Impossible. The security recordings confirm it, my lord, and the craft contains technology unlike anything our engineers have seen. The Dark Lord's mind reached out, probing the currents of the Force. The disturbance remained, a persistent wrongness. This is no rebel trick. Bring me the craft and all scans of this teleportation device. I will oversee the investigation personally. Yes, Lord Vader. As the officer hurried away, Vader returned his gaze to the endless city. Something had arrived on Coruscant that did not belong. Something that might prove useful to him, or dangerous. In the lower levels of the city planet, far from the gleaming spires where the powerful dwelled, Rick Sanchez stumbled through a crowded marketplace. Alien species of every description haggled at stalls selling goods from across the galaxy. He moved, with purpose, despite his apparent intoxication, his eyes cataloging everything around him with scientific precision. Okay, so we've got a fascist galactic empire, laser swords, and... He paused as a Twi'lek brushed past him, head tentacles. Great. He ducked into an alley and pulled out his portal gun, examining it with a frown. Power supply damaged in the crash. Need to find a new energy source compatible with cross-dimensional quantum field manipulation. He tapped at a crude device on his wrist, which won't be easy in a universe where they call basic physics the Force. A shadow fell across him. Rick looked up to find 3 rough-looking humans blocking the alley exit. The leader, a scarred man with a cybernetic eye, grinned menacingly. "That's some interesting tech you've got there, old man. Don't look Imperial. Don't look like anything I've seen before." Rick sighed and took another swig from his flask. "I don't have time for the local color experience. Why don't you go mug someone who doesn't have an IQ higher than this entire planet's population combined?" The thugs advanced. Rick's eyes darted around the alley, taking note of a power conduit overhead, a waste disposal unit to his right, and the specific model of blasters his would-be assailants carried. His mind calculated 17 different ways to handle the situation. He chose the simplest. "You know what? Take it." He tossed the portal gun to the leader, who caught it reflexively. "Now that's smart," the scarred man said, examining his prize. "What's it do?" Rick smiled thinly. "It's a portable hole generator. Very valuable. Just point and shoot." The thug aimed the device at a nearby wall and pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. He scowled and shook it. "It's broken." No, you need to adjust the interdimensional frequency first," Rick said, stepping forward. "Here, let me show you." The moment the device was back in his hands, Rick made a lightning-fast adjustment and fired at the feet of his attackers. A portal opened beneath them, and all 3 dropped through with startled cries. Rick closed the portal immediately. "Enjoy the vacuum of space, dipshits." He pocketed the device and continued down the alley, muttering to himself, "Need to find a lab. Need parts. Need to figure out if this dimension has anything worth stealing before I blow this popsicle stand." His scientific mind was already dissecting the implications of this reality. A universe where spaceships made sounds in a vacuum, where laser swords were somehow superior weapons to ranged blasters, and where some mystical energy field supposedly controlled everything. It was scientifically absurd, yet here he was. And if there was one thing that truly interested Rick Sanchez, it was an impossible problem. Miles above in the Imperial Palace, a team of the Empire's finest engineers examined Rick's crashed ship. They had removed panels, extracted components, and were systematically trying to understand its principles of operation. A senior officer delivered their preliminary findings to Darth Vader in his meditation chamber. "The craft appears to use a drive system based on principles we don't fully understand, Lord Vader. It manipulates space itself rather than traveling through it. The power source is like nothing we've encountered. It generates energy through what appears to be matter from elsewhere." Vader's helmet turned slowly toward the officer. "Elsewhere. Another dimension, perhaps. The readings suggest the craft tears holes between realities." The Dark Lord stood, his imposing figure casting a long shadow. "Such technology would make hyperdrives obsolete. It would allow us to strike anywhere, without warning, without known routes to track." He paused. "The Emperor must be informed." The officer swallowed nervously. "There's more, my lord. We found biological samples in the vessel. The pilot appears to be human, but with genetic modifications. His brain scan patterns, recovered from the ship's integration systems, show activity unlike anything in our medical records. A human, not of this galaxy, with the power to move between worlds," Vader said thoughtfully. "Find him, now." Rick, meanwhile, had broken into a small research facility in Coruscant's industrial district. The Imperial scientists who normally worked there were unconscious, bound with improvised restraints. Rick moved between workstations, cannibalizing equipment, and assembling a crude laboratory. Holographic displays showed schematics of local technology as he systematically took them apart and reassembled them to serve his purposes. Subspace communication relies on tachyonic particles, but they call it the HoloNet because everything needs a cutesy name. He grumbled, soldering components together. Their faster-than-light travel uses hyperspace, which is basically just a lazy writer's wormhole physics. He took a drink from his flask and continued working. But this kyber, crystal stuff, that's actually interesting. On a workbench lay several small crystals, glowing with internal light. Rick had stolen them from a secure Imperial container he'd found in the facility's vault. He aimed a scanner at them, frowning at the readings. Crystalline structure responds to biological energy fields, amplifies and focuses them. Similar to certain isotopes I've seen in dimension C-341, but with quantum entanglement properties on a macro scale. His eyes narrowed. They're calling it mystical, but it's just science they're too primitive to understand. The door to the lab slid open. Rick spun around, a cobbled-together weapon in hand, but hesitated when he saw what had entered. A small droid, dome-headed with a cylindrical body, rolled forward, emitting a series of beeps and whistles. Rick stared at it for a long moment, then lowered his weapon. An astromech droid. R2 unit, by the look of it. He crouched to examine the machine. Let me guess. You're on the run. From the evil Empire too? Got separated from your rebel friends? The droid beeped affirmatively. Yeah, figured. You stumbled on my little hideout while looking for a place to lay low. Rick returned to his workbench. Whatever, just stay out of my way. I'm trying to fix my portal gun so I can get out of this scientifically inconsistent hellhole. The droid rolled closer, examining Rick's work with obvious curiosity. It beeped a question. What am I doing? I'm building a scanner that can detect the specific energy field this universe calls the Force. Rick's hands moved rapidly, connecting circuits. See, I've got a theory. This Force isn't mystical at all. It's a quantum field that certain organisms have evolved to detect and manipulate. These kyber crystals are natural amplifiers for it. Once I understand the principles, I can either use it to power my portal gun or prove it's just another exploitable natural phenomenon. The astromech droid whistled skeptically. No, I don't care about the philosophical implications, Rick snapped. I don't care about your rebellion or your empire. I just want to understand how this reality works so I can use it to get home. Or find a better bar, whichever comes first. The droid beeped again, this time in a pattern that made Rick pause. What do you mean, be careful what you look for? Rick scoffed. It's just exotic physics, not magic. A series of urgent beeps erupted from the droid as its dome swiveled toward the door. Someone's coming? Rick grabbed his half-finished scanner and portal gun. How many? The droid projected a hologram showing a squad of stormtroopers approaching the building, led by officers in black uniforms. Rick recognized the uniforms from his encyclopedic knowledge of science fiction. Imperial Security Bureau. Great. Rick quickly gathered his most essential components. They must have tracked the power surge when I tapped into the main grid. Time to relocate. The astromech beeped urgently, extending a small antenna. You know a safe place? With access to more advanced tech? Rick considered for only a moment. Fine. Lead the way, tin can. But if you're setting me up, I'll reprogram you into a toaster. As Imperial forces breached the laboratory, Rick and the droid had already slipped out through a maintenance duct. The droid led him through a labyrinth of service corridors and abandoned tunnels deep below Coruscant's surface. They emerged hours later in a dilapidated warehouse district that had once been a thriving industrial center centuries ago. The droid rolled up to a nondescript wall and extended a mechanical arm, interfacing with a hidden control panel. A secret door slid open, revealing a surprisingly well-equipped hideout. Inside, several humans in civilian clothes looked up in alarm, reaching for weapons. Stand down, called a stern woman with graying hair pulled back in a tight bun. R2C4 wouldn't bring anyone here unless it was important. She turned, suspicious eyes on Rick. Who are you? And why has our droid decided you're worth the risk? Rick burped and wiped his mouth. Name's Rick Sanchez, genius, inventor, unwilling tourist in your reality. He glanced around at the rebel equipment. Nice setup, very plucky resistance fighters. Really brings the whole space fantasy aesthetic together. The woman's expression hardened. This isn't a fantasy. The Empire kills people every day. Real people. Yeah, I get it. Evil Empire, heroic rebellion, cosmic struggle between good and evil. Rick rolled his eyes, tale as old as time. But I'm not here to join your revolution. I just need equipment to understand how your universe works so I can leave it. A younger man stepped forward. Leave it? What do you mean? Rick sighed dramatically and held up his damaged portal gun. I'm from another dimension. This device lets me travel between realities. It's broken, and I need to understand your local physics to fix it. Specifically, this force everyone keeps mystically woo-wooing about. Silence fell over the rebel hideout. The woman and the younger man exchanged glances. The force isn't something to be trifled with, the woman said carefully. That's what everyone keeps saying. But from what I can tell, it's just an energy field created by living things that certain people can tap into, probably through midi-chlorians or whatever you call them. Just specialized cellular organelles that interact with a quantum field. Rick moved to a workbench and began unpacking his salvaged equipment. So, you going to help me, or should I find some other rebels who actually want an edge over the Empire? The woman considered him for a long moment. My name is Lyra Urso. This is my son, Galen. Her eyes were haunted as she added, the Empire took my husband. He was a scientist, forced to work on their weapons programs. And you think I can help get him back? Rick laughed. Lady, I'm not here to rescue anybody. I just want to understand your universe's weird physics. Galen stepped forward. But your technology could help us. If you can truly move between worlds, create portals. Yeah, that's not happening, kid. Rick turned his attention to assembling his equipment. The moment I get this working, I'm out of here. This universe is too constraining. Binary moral choices, predetermined destinies, cyclical historical patterns, it's all too rigid for my tastes. Lyra's expression hardened. So you'd just leave, knowing you could have helped? Rick didn't look up from his work. Pretty much, yeah. It's kind of my thing. The astromech droid rolled forward, beeping insistently. Rick glanced at it. What do you mean the Empire's already looking for me specifically? How would they even know who I am? Galen activated a holo terminal. Imperial bulletins scrolled across the display. They've issued an alert for a dimensional traveler with technology that could revolutionize space travel and warfare. They're offering an enormous bounty. Rick's expression darkened. Great, so much for lying low. He continued working on his scanner. How long until your rebel friends get here to check out the new guy? Lyra tensed. What makes you think, oh, come on. This is clearly just an outpost. You've already sent a message to your superiors about the weird guy your droid dragged in who claims to be from another dimension. Rick connected two components with a spark of electricity. I give it 6 hours before someone with actual authority shows up to decide if I'm useful, crazy, or dangerous. The silence that followed confirmed his assessment. Rick smiled thinly and returned to his work, muttering equations under his breath. The scanner was taking shape, a cobbled-together device of Imperial tech and components from his crashed ship. It hummed with energy as he calibrated it. Almost got it, he murmured. Just need to isolate the specific quantum frequency that corresponds to this forces field. Galen watched with fascination. What will that tell you? It'll show me how this energy field permeates everything, how it connects living beings, how certain people can manipulate it. Rick made a final adjustment. And most importantly, it'll tell me if I can use it to power my portal gun. He activated the scanner. The device projected a holographic display showing waves of energy flowing through the hideout. Most were faint, ambient patterns, but when the scanner passed over the rebels, Rick noticed something interesting. You've all got higher concentrations around you. Not enough to be what they call force-sensitive, but more than baseline. He aimed the scanner at himself and frowned. and I've got almost none. Interesting. Must be because I'm not from this dimension. The scanner beeped as it detected something outside the hideout. Rick adjusted the settings, and his eyes widened. We've got a problem. There's something out there with an extremely high concentration. Moving this way. Lyra rushed to the security monitors. Imperial troops. And... her voice faltered. Inquisitors. Inquisi-whats? Rick asked, already gathering his equipment. Force users who hunt down Jedi and other Force sensitives for the Empire, Galen explained urgently. They must have detected your scanner. Fantastic. Rick shoved components into his coat pockets. Got a back exit? The building shook as something struck it with tremendous force. Dust rained from the ceiling. A red energy blade pierced the outer door, beginning to carve a circle. Rick stared at the lightsaber cutting through. That's not scientifically possible. The energy containment alone should... Now is not the time. Lyra grabbed his arm, pulling him toward a concealed exit. R2, wipe the databanks. Everyone else, emergency evacuation pattern. The rebels scrambled to destroy evidence and escape. Rick followed Lyra and Galen through a narrow passage that led to an ancient maintenance tunnel. Behind them, they heard the crash of the door falling and stormtroopers pouring into the hideout. They're after you, Lyra said as they ran. Your technology. Story of my life, Rick muttered. Every authority figure in every dimension wants what I've got. Usually my brain, sometimes my tech. They emerged from the tunnel into a vast, dimly lit cavern filled with ancient machinery. Rick recognized it as one of Coruscant's long-abandoned industrial sectors, buried beneath millennia of urban development. The perfect hiding place. We'll be safe here temporarily, Galen said, catching his breath. This area doesn't appear on modern maps. Rick wasn't listening. His scanner was picking up readings from the depths of the cavern. There's something down there. Something with an energy signature similar to those kyber crystals, but much stronger. Lyra and Galen exchanged alarmed glances. This was once a Jedi site, Lyra said quietly. Before the Empire, before the Republic. The ancient Jedi built temples throughout Coruscant. Rick was already moving toward the source of the readings, drawn by scientific curiosity. Whatever it is, it might have enough energy to power my portal gun. Wait, Galen called. We don't know what's down there. But Rick had already disappeared into the darkness, his scanner lighting the way. Lyra and Galen hurried after him, guided by the astromech droid's sensors. They descended through levels of ancient architecture, the style changing as they went deeper, becoming more primal, more mysterious. The droid beeped nervously. Yeah, I feel it too, Rick muttered. The concentration of this energy field is increasing exponentially. He checked his scanner. We're getting close to the source. They emerged into a vast circular chamber dominated by a central plinth. Atop it sat a glowing blue cube, its surfaces etched with intricate patterns that seemed to shift when viewed directly. The light it cast filled the chamber, with strange shadows that moved independently of their sources. Rick approached it slowly, his scanner whirring. Incredible. It's a perfect hypercube projection into three-dimensional space. The energy readings are off the charts. A Jedi holocron, Lyra breathed. One of the ancient ones. A what-acron? Rick raised an eyebrow. A repository of knowledge, created by Jedi masters to preserve their wisdom. She grabbed his arm as he reached for it. Don't touch it. Holocrons can only be opened by those attuned to the Force. Rick shook off her hand. It's just a sophisticated data storage device that uses quantum entanglement as an interface. Nothing mystical about it. He examined it from all angles. The energy it's emitting is exactly what I need. If I can tap into it, I can power my portal gun and get out of here. Before Lyra could stop him, Rick placed his scanner against the holocron. The device beeped frantically as it interfaced with the ancient artifact. The holocrons, the glow intensified, and the patterns on its surface began spinning rapidly. It's working! Rick exclaimed. It's recognizing my scanner as an access protocol device. The holocron rose from the plinth, hovering in the air. It unfolded like a flower, its surfaces reconfiguring into an intricate geometric pattern. From within, a beam of light projected outward, forming the image of a robed figure. The hologram was ancient, flickering with age, but the dignity and power of the Jedi Master it portrayed remained intact. "I am Keeper Odan-Ur," the figure announced in a resonant voice. "This holocron contains the knowledge of the cosmic force, the living force, and the unifying force." Yeah, mystical mumbo-jumbo," Rick waved dismissively. "Just tell me how to tap into this energy field to power an interdimensional portal device." The hologram regarded him curiously. "You are not of this reality, traveler. The force flows differently around you, or rather, it does not flow through you at all." Rick blinked in surprise. "How could you possibly know that?" "The force connects all things across time and space, even across realities." The hologram extended a hand. "But beware, traveler. To manipulate the cosmic force without understanding its nature invites disaster. The balance must be maintained." "Balance? Schmalance," Rick muttered, adjusting his scanner to record the energy frequencies. "I just need enough juice to power my portal gun." The hologram's expression turned grave. "The path you seek leads to destruction. The force is not merely energy to be harnessed, but a living connection between all things." Rick rolled his eyes. "Save the philosophy lecture. I've heard this speech in 100 different dimensions with 100 different mystical energy fields. It's always the same. Great power, great responsibility. Maintain the balance. Blah, blah, blah." As Rick spoke, the holocron's light began to pulse erratically. The hologram flickered and distorted. "You have been warned, traveler," the image of Odan-Ur said, its voice growing fainter. "The force will defend itself." With those words, the holocron closed violently, emitting a pulse of energy that knocked everyone back. Rick's scanner absorbed some of the energy, its circuits overloading with power. He scrambled to his feet, checking the device. "Perfect! Got exactly what I needed." He connected the scanner to his portal gun, which began to glow with the same blue energy as the holocron. "Now I can get out of this dimension," and a new voice echoed through the chamber, mechanical and menacing. "You will go nowhere, dimensional traveler." They turned to see a tall figure in black armor standing in the entrance to the chamber. The rhythmic sound of breathing filled the silence. Behind him, red lightsabers ignited as two Inquisitors stepped into view. "Darth Vader," Lyra whispered, her face pale. Rick sized up the Sith Lord with a critical eye. "Nice outfit, very dramatic. The breathing apparatus is a bit on the nose, though." Vader's hand extended, and Rick's portal gun flew from his grasp into the Dark Lord's waiting palm. "Your technology is now property of the Empire." Rick's eyes narrowed. "Telekinesis. Interesting application of the quantum field manipulation. Probably channeled through those midi-chlorians in your cells." "Your understanding is incomplete," Vader responded. "The Force is far more than particles and energy." He examined the portal gun. "With this device, the Empire will extend its reach beyond this galaxy, beyond this universe. New worlds to conquer, new resources to claim." "Yeah, that's not going to work for you," Rick said casually. "That device is genetically locked to my brainwave patterns. Try to use it, and it'll melt your fancy helmet with your head still in it." Vader's masked face turned toward him. "Then you will reconfigure it for my use." Rick laughed. "Or what? You'll force choke me, torture me, kill my friends here?" He gestured toward Lyra and Galen. "I've been threatened by beings that would make you wet your cape, Vader. Cosmic entities that could blink and erase your entire dimension." The air seemed to thicken as Vader's anger manifested through the Force. Objects around the chamber began to tremble. "You do not comprehend the power of the dark side," Vader intoned. "And you don't comprehend the power of science," Rick countered. He pulled a small device from his pocket and pressed a button. The portal gun in Vader's hand emitted a high-pitched whine. That's a remote detonation trigger. You've got about 5 seconds before that portal gun creates a black hole that'll swallow this entire sector. Vader hesitated, then hurled the device toward the center of the chamber. Rick dove forward, catching it in mid-air. He rolled to his feet, grinning. Just kidding, but thanks for giving it back. He aimed it at the wall and pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. He frowned and shook the device. Still, not enough power. Damn it! The Inquisitors advanced, twirling their double-bladed lightsabers. Lyra and Galen backed away, the astromech droid beeping frantically beside them. "Surrender the device," Vader commanded, "and your death will be quick." Rick's mind raced, calculating options, probabilities, escape routes. His eyes fixed on the holocron, still sitting on its plinth. "You know what? Fine. You want interdimensional travel? Let me show you how it works." He lunged for the holocron, snatching it before anyone could stop him. The moment his hands touched it, the artifact flared with blinding light. Rick jammed his portal gun against it, creating a direct connection between the two technologies. "No!" Vader's voice thundered as he sensed the danger. He thrust out a hand, but it was too late. The portal gun absorbed the holocron's energy, glowing with power beyond its design parameters. Rick aimed it at the chamber wall and fired. A swirling green portal opened, but it was unstable, its edges fluctuating wildly. "Everyone through!" Rick shouted to Lyra, Galen, and the droid. "Now!" The rebels hesitated for only a moment before running for the portal. The astromech droid rolled through first, followed by Galen. Lyra paused at the threshold, looking back at Rick. "What about you?" she called. "I'll be right behind you," Rick answered, his attention fixed on the portal gun, which was now smoking in his hands. "This thing's about to overload. Go." Lyra disappeared through the portal. Vader and the Inquisitors charged forward, lightsabers raised. Rick waited until the last possible moment before diving through himself. The portal collapsed behind him just as Vader reached it, the Sith Lord's rage manifesting as a force shockwave that shattered the ancient chamber. Rick tumbled through a swirling vortex of green energy, the portal gun still clutched in his hands. The device was burning hot now, the connection with the holocron having filled it with more power than it could safely contain. Ahead of him, he could see Lyra, Galen, and the droid being pulled along the same interdimensional current. "Hang on," he shouted to them. "The exit point is unstable. We could end up anywhere." The vortex began to fragment around them, splitting into multiple paths. Rick tried to adjust the portal gun's settings, but the controls were fused. The holocron, still attached to the device, pulsed with energy that seemed to have a will of its own. "This doesn't make sense," Rick muttered. "It's almost like it's directing us." The vortex narrowed suddenly, accelerating them toward a bright point of light. They burst through into blinding sunshine, landing roughly on hard-packed sand. Rick rolled to his feet, squinting against the glare. 2 suns hung in the sky above a desolate desert landscape. "Tatooine," Lyra said, recognizing the binary star system. "We're on Tatooine." Rick examined his portal gun. The holocron was still attached, but both were dark. Now, their energy depleted. "Great. From one backwater to another." He looked around. "At least we lost Vader and his breathing problem." The astromech droid beeped excitedly, its dome swiveling to point toward a settlement visible in the distance. "Mos Eisley Spaceport." Galen identified it. "We might find transport there. The Empire has less control in the Outer Rim." Rick wasn't listening. He was focused on his scanner, which was picking up strange readings. "There's something weird about this place. The force energy is concentrated here. Not everywhere, but in specific locations." He adjusted the settings. "And one of those concentrations is heading this way." They turned to see a hooded figure approaching across the desert, moving with purpose despite the heat. As the figure drew closer, Rick's scanner began to beep frantically. Whoever that is, they're off the charts, Rick said. Like Vader, but different. The frequency is cleaner somehow. The figure stopped several meters away and lowered his hood, revealing the weathered face of an older man with a neatly trimmed beard. His eyes were sharp and penetrating, taking in the strange group with evident curiosity. "Hello there," he said mildly. "It's not often that people appear out of thin air on Tatooine, especially people being pursued by the Empire." Rick raised an eyebrow. "And how would you know we're running from the Empire?" The man smiled slightly. "Let's just say I sensed a disturbance. My name is Ben Kenobi." Rick's eyes widened in recognition. Obi-Wan Kenobi, Jedi Master, currently in hiding after the whole Order 66 debacle. Obi-Wan's expression didn't change, but his hand drifted closer to the lightsaber concealed beneath his robes. "You seem to know a great deal, stranger. I know this entire universe is a cosmic joke with predictable plot points and convenient coincidences," Rick said dismissively. "Of course we'd land right next to one of the last surviving Jedi. The Force probably arranged it." Obi-Wan's gaze sharpened. "The Force works in mysterious ways. The Force works in highly predictable ways if you understand fifth-dimensional quantum mechanics." Rick countered. He held up his scanner. "Which I'm starting to." The Jedi's attention shifted to the device in Rick's hand, then to the holocron attached to his portal gun. His expression registered shock. "That holocron. It's ancient. From the earliest days of the Jedi Order. Yeah, we borrowed it from a secret chamber under Coruscant, right before Darth Vader tried to kill us." Rick detached the holocron and tossed it to Obi-Wan, who caught it reflexively. "Here. Consider it a gift. I've drained most of its energy anyway." Obi-Wan held the ancient artifact reverently. "This contains knowledge that was thought lost forever. Knowledge, schmowledge. What I need is a lab." Rick gestured toward Mos Eisley. "That smuggler's paradise have anything resembling scientific equipment?" "You won't find advanced technology in Mos Eisley," Obi-Wan said. "But before we discuss your needs, perhaps you should introduce yourselves and explain how you came to be here." Lyra stepped forward. "I'm Lyra Urso. This is my son, Galen. We're with the Rebellion." She indicated the astromech droid. "And this is R2C4. And I'm Rick Sanchez, interdimensional traveler, smartest being in multiple universes, currently stuck in a galaxy far, far away with a broken portal gun and no decent alcohol." Rick burped for emphasis. "Nice to meet you, Space Wizard." Obi-Wan regarded him thoughtfully. "You're not from this reality. Give the Jedi a prize," Rick said sarcastically. "Yes, I'm from a dimension where your universe is fictional entertainment, which is why I know all about you, Vader, the Emperor, and the whole tragic opera you call history." "If what you say is true," Obi-Wan replied calmly, "then your knowledge could be dangerous in the wrong hands." Rick tapped his temple, hence why Vader was so keen to get his asthmatic mitts on me. But what he really wanted was this. He held up the portal gun, technology that could let the Empire expand beyond this universe. Imagine stormtroopers marching through portals into peaceful dimensions that have never heard of Sith or Jedi or midi-chlorians. Obi-Wan's expression darkened. Such power would upset the balance of the Force itself. "There's that balance talk again," Rick groaned. "Look, I don't care about your cosmic balance. I just want to fix my portal gun and get home, or to a dimension with better booze." The Jedi Master studied Rick for a long moment, as if seeing through him. "Your indifference is a shield, I think. You've seen too much across too many realities. It's easier to care about nothing than to care about everything." Rick's expression hardened. "Don't psychoanalyze me, Kenobi. I've been mind-probed by entities that make your Force look like a parlor trick." Obi-Wan didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he turned to Lyra and Galen. "You say you're with the Rebellion. How did you come to be in the company of this unusual traveler?" As Lyra explained their encounter with Rick and subsequent flight from Vader, Rick wandered a few steps away, examining his damaged equipment. The portal gun was functional but depleted. The scanner still worked, collecting data on the force energy that permeated this world. What he needed was a power source stable enough to charge the portal gun without destroying it. His eyes fell on Obi-Wan's lightsaber. A kyber crystal powered that elegant weapon. If he could extract it and modify it. The Jedi's voice interrupted his thoughts. "I can sense what you're considering, Mr. Sanchez. My lightsaber is not available for dissection." Rick scowled. "Fine. But I need a kyber crystal or something with equivalent energy output. Unless you want me as a permanent houseguest, swapping stories about your glory days with Qui-Gon Jinn." Obi-Wan's eyes registered surprise at the reference, but he recovered quickly. "There may be another option." He turned to the horizon. "Come with me. It's not safe to remain in the open. The Empire has spies everywhere, even here." They followed Obi-Wan across the desert, eventually reaching a small, isolated dwelling built into a rocky outcropping. The interior was sparse but neat, clearly the home of a man who owned little but cared for what he had. "Nice hermit setup," Rick commented, looking around. "Very wise exile aesthetic." Obi-Wan ignored the jab. He placed the holocron on a small table and turned to his guests. "You can rest here. The Empire won't find you." "Not finding us would be great," Galen said, "but we still need to get off-planet eventually. Our rebellion cell on Coruscant will report us missing or captured." "I have contacts who can arrange discreet transport," Obi-Wan assured him. "But first, let's address our immediate problem." He turned to Rick. "You need a power source for your device." Rick nodded. "Something compatible with cross-dimensional quantum field manipulation. In most universes, I'd use isotope 465, but I'm guessing that doesn't exist here." "No," Obi-Wan agreed, "but there may be an alternative." He moved to a small chest tucked into an alcove, opened it, and removed a cloth-wrapped object. Unwrapping it revealed a small, broken crystal that still glowed within a light. "This fragment of a kyber crystal may serve your purpose." Rick took it eagerly, scanning it with his device. "It's perfect. The energy signature is exactly what I need, but it's damaged. The internal matrix is fractured." "Yes," Obi-Wan said gravely. "It was part of a larger crystal that was shattered during a confrontation long ago." Rick examined it closely. "I can work with this, but I'll need tools. Precision instruments. Such things are hard to come by on Tatooine," Obi-Wan said. The astromech droid beeped suddenly, extending a small tool arm from its chassis. Rick looked at it in surprise. "You have micro-engineering tools built in? Well, why didn't you say so earlier?" He patted the droid's dome. "You're not completely useless after all, rolling trash can." As Rick began working with the droid to modify his portal gun, Obi-Wan took Lyra and Galen aside. They spoke in hushed tones about the rebellion, the growing resistance to the Empire, and the possibility of a superweapon being developed, the project that had taken Lyra's husband. Hours passed as Rick worked, muttering equations and cursing the limitations of the technology available to him. The kyber crystal fragment proved challenging to integrate with his portal gun systems, its energy patterns unlike anything he'd encountered before. "It's not just focusing energy," he muttered to himself. "It's almost like it's alive somehow, responding to intention as much as physical input." He made another adjustment. Fascinating from a quantum consciousness perspective, annoying from a practical engineering standpoint. Night fell over the desert, the temperature dropping rapidly. Inside Obi-Wan's dwelling, they gathered around a small heating unit, sharing a simple meal. Rick continued tinkering with his device, pausing only occasionally to eat or drink from his seemingly bottomless flask. "Your knowledge of the Force is unusual," Obi-Wan observed, watching Rick work. "You see it as a field of energy to be manipulated, not as the spiritual connection most Force users understand it to be." "That's because I'm looking at it objectively, not through the lens of thousand-year-old religious dogma," Rick replied without looking up. "It's quantum entanglement on a massive scale, linking all matter in this universe." What you call the light side and dark side are just different frequency bands of the same energy spectrum. Perhaps, Obi-Wan conceded. But there is wisdom in the ancient understanding as well. The Force has a will of its own, Rick snorted. Personifying natural phenomena is what primitive cultures do to make sense of the world, no offense. And yet, Obi-Wan said mildly, the holocron guided you here, to this place, at this time. Was that merely coincidence? Rick paused in his work, frowning. Random quantum fluctuations in an unstable interdimensional portal. Nothing mystical about it, if you say so. Obi-Wan's slight smile suggested he thought otherwise. The discussion was interrupted by a series of urgent beeps from the astromech droid. It rolled to the dwelling's small communication array, interfacing with it rapidly. What is it? Lyra asked, alarmed. Imperial Communications, Obi-Wan translated, listening to the droid's beeps. They've deployed probe droids throughout the Outer Rim. They're searching for... He looked at Rick. For technology that matches the energy signature detected on Coruscant. They're tracking the interdimensional energy from my portal gun, Rick realized. Clever. Didn't think they had the scientific know-how for that. Never underestimate the Empire's resources, Obi-Wan warned. If probe droids are being deployed, it won't be long before they reach Tatooine. Rick returned to his work with renewed urgency. Then I need to get this finished. Once it's working, I can leave this dimension, and you can all go back to your regularly scheduled rebellion. Galen looked troubled. But what about the knowledge you have? About the future of our galaxy, about the Empire's weaknesses. You could help us. Not my circus, not my monkeys, Rick said dismissively. I make it a point not to get involved in the problems of dimensions I'm just passing through. Even if millions of lives are at stake? Lyra challenged. Rick's hands stilled momentarily. Look, I've seen infinite realities, infinite versions of stories like yours. Heroes win, heroes lose, empires fall, new ones rise. It's all the same cosmic joke playing out across the multiverse. He resumed working. Besides, interfering with established timelines is messy, creates alternate branches, paradoxes. Obi-Wan regarded him thoughtfully. For someone who claims not to care, you seem concerned about the consequences of your actions. Rick didn't answer, focusing intently on connecting the kyber crystal fragment to his portal gun. The crystal began to glow brighter as he worked, pulsing with energy that cast strange shadows around the dwelling. Almost got it, he murmured. Just need to calibrate the quantum frequency to match this dimension's specific. A distant explosion interrupted him. They rushed to the dwelling's entrance. On the horizon, flames rose from the direction of a small settlement. Sand people wouldn't attack at night with incendiaries, Obi-Wan said grimly. Those are Imperial weapons. The astromech droid projected a holographic display showing Imperial probe droids and stormtroopers moving across the desert, methodically searching each settlement. They're getting closer, Lyra said. We need to leave. Rick cursed under his breath. I need more time. The calibration isn't complete. Time is something we don't have, Obi-Wan said. He moved quickly, gathering essential supplies. There's a place we can go. Ancient ruins in the Jundland wastes. The mineral content of the rocks there might mask your technology's energy signature. They hurried into the night, traveling by foot to avoid detection. Obi-Wan led them through narrow canyons and treacherous ravines, following paths only he knew. The twin moons of Tatooine provided just enough light to navigate by, casting long shadows that seemed to move independently of their owners. As they descended into a particularly deep ravine, Rick's scanner began to beep softly. He checked the readings and frowned. There's something weird down here. The Force energy is different, older, somehow. He looked at Obi-Wan. What aren't you telling us about these ruins? The Jedi's expression revealed nothing. They predate the Republic, some believe. They were built by Force users who came before the Jedi or the Sith. They emerged from the ravine into a small hidden valley. Ancient stone structures rose from the sand, their purpose long forgotten. At the center stood a circular platform inscribed with symbols that glowed faintly in the moonlight. "Whoa," Rick breathed, genuine surprise in his voice. "These markings are quantum equations. Primitive, but the principles are sound." He moved to the platform, scanning the inscriptions. They were studying interdimensional travel. "Just like me." Obi-Wan nodded. "The ancient texts speak of Force users who could move between worlds. Most Jedi considered these stories metaphorical. But they weren't. Were they?" Rick's scientific curiosity was fully engaged now. They were actually accessing parallel dimensions using the Force as a conduit. He checked his scanner. "The energy here is perfect for what I need. It's like finding interdimensional quantum physics research notes from 1,000,000,000 years ago." As Rick worked to incorporate the new information into his device, the others made camp in the shelter of the ruins. The astromech droid kept watch, its sensors scanning for approaching threats. For now, they seemed to have evaded the Imperial search. Hours passed as Rick calibrated his portal gun, occasionally consulting the ancient inscriptions. The Kyber crystal fragment pulsed with increasing brightness as he worked, responding to the energy field that permeated the ruins. Dawn was breaking when Rick finally stood, portal gun in hand. "It's done. I've calibrated it to the specific quantum frequency of this dimension. One shot should be enough to get me home." Lyra looked up from where she sat with Galen. "You're leaving? Just like that?" "That was always the plan," Rick said, avoiding her eyes. "Fix the portal gun, get out of here. Let you all get back to your rebellion." Obi-Wan approached, studying the modified device. "The Kyber crystal seems to have bonded with your technology." "Yeah, weird side effect. It's almost like it's evolving to accommodate the interdimensional calculations." Rick aimed the portal gun at an open space between two ruined columns. "Stand back. No telling how stable this will be on the first try." Before he could pull the trigger, the astromech droid emitted a series of frantic beeps. Obi-Wan tensed, his hand moving to his lightsaber. "Imperial forces," he translated, "approaching from the north. They've tracked us." Rick hesitated, his finger on the trigger. "How long until they get here?" "Minutes, perhaps," Obi-Wan said. "You should go now, while you can." Rick looked from the Jedi to Lyra and Galen, conflict evident on his face despite his usual mask of indifference. The portal gun hummed with power in his hand, ready to create his escape route. "Damn it," he muttered. "Why do I always get stuck with these moral dilemmas?" He lowered the portal gun. "Fine, I'll help you fight them off, then I'm leaving. For real." Relief washed over Lyra's face. "Thank you, Rick." "Don't thank me yet," he grumbled, examining the ruins. "I need to set up a defense system. Something that will neutralize their numerical advantage." His eyes fell on the circular platform with its ancient inscriptions. "Actually, I have a better idea." Rick hurried to the platform and began making adjustments to his scanner. These ruins were designed to channel the Force energy in specific patterns. If I can reconfigure that flow, I might be able to create a localized disruption field. "Disrupting what, exactly?" Galen asked. "Their weapons, communications, maybe even their ability to detect us." Rick worked rapidly, placing his scanner at key points around the platform. "The Force permeates everything in this universe, right? Including their technology. If I can create a counter-resonance, it might buy us some time." Obi-Wan watched with interest. "You're attempting to manipulate the Force without being Force-sensitive yourself." "I'm manipulating the quantum field that you call the Force using scientific principles," Rick corrected. "No mystical mumbo-jumbo required." The sound of Imperial transports grew louder. Obi-Wan moved to the edge of the ruins, looking out across the desert. "They'll be here in moments. Whatever you're planning, hurry." Rick connected his portal gun to the scanner, using it to channel energy into the ancient platform. The inscriptions began to glow brighter, pulsing in patterns that matched the frequencies displayed on his devices. "Almost there," he muttered. "Just need to invert the quantum harmonics to create a disruptive interference pattern." The platform suddenly flared with brilliant light, energy cascading outward in concentric rings. The kyber crystal in Rick's portal gun glowed with blinding intensity. The light washed over the ruins, then expanded beyond, racing across the desert toward the approaching Imperial forces. In the distance, they heard the sounds of mechanical failure, transports crashing, communications equipment shorting out, blasters misfiring. The disruption field had worked, at least temporarily. "That bought us maybe 10 minutes, Rick said, retrieving his equipment. "Their more advanced tech will recalibrate faster than the simple stuff." Obi-Wan's expression was impressed despite his reservations. "You've done something I wouldn't have thought possible for a non-Force user." "That's because you're thinking of the Force as something mystical rather than a natural phenomenon that can only be scientifically manipulated," Rick said, but there was less edge to his tone. "Now, I suggest you three find cover. When they get here, it's going to get messy." "You're going to fight?" Lyra asked incredulously. "Hell no. I'm going to open a portal right in the middle of them, leading to deep space." Rick checked his portal gun. "Should create enough confusion for you to escape." Obi-Wan shook his head. "A better solution would be to create a diversion elsewhere, draw them away from here entirely." Rick considered this. "That could work. I could open a portal that emits the same energy signature as my tech, but kilometers from here. They'd follow it, thinking it's us." "Do it," Obi-Wan urged. "Then we can make our way to Mos Eisley. I have contacts there who can get you off-planet safely," he told Lyra and Galen. Rick aimed his portal gun at the open air and fired. A small, unstable portal opened, not large enough to pass through, but emitting the distinctive energy signature of interdimensional technology. With a few adjustments to his scanner, he programmed the portal to move slowly across the desert, away from their position. "That should keep them busy for a while," he said, watching the portal drift away like a spectral beacon. "Now, about that escape route to Mos Eisley." Obi-Wan was about to respond when the astromech droid emitted a new series of warning beeps. These were different, more urgent, more afraid. "What now?" Rick demanded. The droid projected a holographic image captured by its long-range sensors. A distinctive TIE advanced fighter was approaching, accompanied by standard TIE fighters. Even at this distance, there was no mistaking the presence in the lead craft. "Vader," Obi-Wan whispered, a complex mix of emotions crossing his face. "He's come himself." Rick's eyes widened. "That's not good. My little trick won't fool him. He can probably sense us directly through the Force." "He can sense me," Obi-Wan corrected grimly. "My presence in the Force is what's drawing him." I should have realized. Understanding dawned on Rick. "Of course, you two have history. Mustafar, the lava, the high ground, all that." Obi-Wan gave him a sharp look. "Your knowledge of our past is disturbing, but not important now. What matters is getting Lyra and Galen to safety." He turned to the rebels. "You must go with Rick. Use his portal device to escape." "And leave you to face Vader alone?" Lyra protested. "It was always going to come to this, sooner or later," Obi-Wan said with quiet resignation. "The will of the Force is clear." Rick looked between them, frustration evident on his face. "This is exactly why I don't get involved in other dimensions' problems. Always with the noble sacrifices and destiny and blah blah blah." He checked his portal gun. "I've got enough power for one stable portal. After that, I'll need to recharge. Then use it to take them to safety." Obi-Wan urged. "My path lies here." "Your path leads to getting cut in half by your angry ex-apprentice," Rick snapped. "I've seen how this story ends." Obi-Wan's eyes narrowed. "You speak as if you know the future of this galaxy." "I know a version of it," Rick admitted. "Though my being here has probably already screwed with the timeline." He paced. thinking rapidly. The thing is, Vader finding you now, before the kid is ready. That changes everything. The kid? Obi-Wan's voice was suddenly sharp. What? Kid? Rick realized he'd said too much. Forget it. Look, we need a plan that doesn't involve anyone nobly sacrificing themselves. That trope is overdone. The sound of TIE fighters grew louder. They had minutes at most. Rick made a decision. All right, change of plans. I'm going to create a portal, but not for escape. We're going to use it as a weapon. He turned to Obi-Wan. You said the Force has a will of its own, right? That it guides events? The Jedi nodded cautiously. Then let's put that to the test. Rick began recalibrating his portal gun. I'm going to open a portal that connects directly to the Force itself. That's impossible, Obi-Wan protested. The Force is not a place you can travel to. Not normally, no. But these ruins were built by people studying interdimensional travel using the Force as a conduit. Rick gestured to the inscriptions. I think they found something, a nexus point where the fabric between dimensions is thin, where the Force exists in its purest form. The world between worlds, Obi-Wan breathed, recognition in his eyes. It was thought to be a myth. Yeah, well, myths tend to be based on something real. Rick positioned himself on the central platform. I'm going to use the Kyber crystal to focus the Force energy here, creating a temporary gateway. When Vader arrives, he'll be drawn to it. The pure Force energy might be enough to overload even his control. And if it doesn't? Lyra asked. Then we're back to Plan A, running like hell. Rick began the final calibrations. Everyone get behind me. This is going to get weird. The distinctive sound of Vader's TIE Advanced filled the air as the Sith Lord's ship appeared on the horizon. The standard TIEs had peeled off, presumably to deal with the decoy portal Rick had created earlier. Vader was coming alone, his focus fixed on the presence he'd sensed. Rick activated his scanner, channeling energy through the ancient platform. The inscriptions blazed with light as power built in the center of the circle. The Kyber crystal in his portal gun pulsed in rhythm with the glowing symbols, two systems synchronizing. Come on, Rick muttered, making final adjustments. Just a little more coherence in the quantum field. The portal gun suddenly jerked in his hands, as if pulling itself toward a specific point. Rick let it guide him, recognizing that the Kyber crystal was responding to something beyond his instrument's ability to detect. He aimed where it directed and pulled the trigger. A portal unlike any he'd created before burst into existence. Instead of the familiar green vortex, this was a shimmering doorway of pure white light. Through it, they could see not another location, but an endless void filled with pathways of light stretching in all directions, connecting distant points of brilliance like a cosmic web. The world between worlds, Obi-Wan said in awe, a place where all times and places connect through the Force. The portal pulsed, sending waves of energy outward. In the distance, Vader's TIE Advanced faltered, its systems disrupted by the sudden surge in Force energy. The ship regained control quickly and continued its approach, but slower now, more cautious. Rick stared at the portal, genuine wonder on his face. It's beautiful, a perfect quantum lattice connecting every point in space-time. He checked his instruments. And incredibly unstable, this won't stay open long. What do we do now? Galen asked, his eyes fixed on Vader's approaching ship. Rick's expression turned calculating. We use it as bait. Vader won't be able to resist investigating a portal to the source of the Force itself. When he gets close enough, he held up a small device he'd removed from his portal gun. This remote detonator will collapse the portal. The energy backlash should disable his ship, giving us time to escape. Obi-Wan's eyes never left the portal. The Force is calling to me, he said quietly. There's something I need to see. Before anyone could stop him, the Jedi Master stepped toward the shimmering gateway. Rick grabbed his arm. Are you crazy? We don't know what will happen if you go in there. I must, Obi-Wan said with certainty. This is the will of the Force. The will of the Force is going to get you killed or worse, Rick argued. That place exists outside normal space-time. You could end up anywhere, anywhen, or nowhere at all. Obi-Wan gently but firmly removed Rick's hand. Some things are more important than personal safety, Mr. Sanchez. Even you must realize that. The Jedi turned to Lyra and Galen. Find your way to Mos Eisley. Ask for Chalmun's cantina and tell the bartender that Ben sent you. He'll help you contact the rebellion. Rick watched in frustration as Obi-Wan approached the portal. This is why I hate getting involved in hero narratives. Always with the cryptic missions and dramatic exits, Vader's ship was nearly upon them now. They could see it clearly, making its final approach to the ruins. Obi-Wan paused at the threshold of the portal and looked back at Rick. Your knowledge of this galaxy's future could be dangerous, but I sense you'll use it wisely despite your protestations. A smile touched his lips. The Force works through all beings, even those who deny its influence. With that, the Jedi stepped through the portal and vanished into the world between worlds. Great, Rick muttered. Now what? He didn't have time to consider further options. Vader's TIE Advanced had landed at the edge of the ruins. The distinctive sound of the Sith Lord's breathing filled the air as the dark figure emerged from his ship, lightsaber already ignited in his hand. I sense Kenobi. Vader's mechanized voice echoed among the ancient stones. Where is he? Rick positioned himself between Vader and the others, portal gun aimed at the Sith Lord. He took a shortcut through the interdimensional express lane. I'd tell you to follow him, but I've got plans for this portal that don't include you. Vader's masked face turned toward the shimmering gateway, then back to Rick. You are the dimensional traveler. The one whose technology could expand the Empire's reach beyond this galaxy. Yeah, that's me. Interdimensional bad influence. Rick's finger hovered over the remote detonator. Now, I'm giving you one chance to turn around and leave. Otherwise, things get messy. The Sith Lord took a step forward, lightsaber humming with deadly energy. You will surrender your technology to the Empire. Yeah, that's not happening. Rick pressed the detonator. Nothing happened. He pressed it again, more urgently. Still nothing. Uh-oh, Rick muttered. He glanced at his scanner. The portal stabilized. It's drawing power directly from the Force now. I can't shut it down remotely. Vader continued his advance. Your technology is impressive, but futile against the power of the dark side. Rick backed away, putting distance between himself and the Sith Lord. His mind raced, through options, calculations, probabilities. The portal gun was still in his hand, but with most of its power diverted to maintaining the gateway to the world between worlds, he couldn't create another portal for escape. Lyra, Galen, take the droid and run, he called over his shoulder. Head for Mos Eisley like Obi-Wan said. We're not leaving you, Lyra replied firmly. This isn't the time for solidarity. Rick snapped. That's Darth freaking Vader. You've got a rebellion to get back to, remember? Vader raised his hand, and Rick felt an invisible force constricting his throat. The Sith's power lifted him off the ground, portal gun still clutched in his hand. Your knowledge of other dimensions will serve the Emperor well, Vader intoned. Through his constricted airway, Rick managed to gasp, sorry, don't do, the whole serving thing. He aimed the portal gun at Vader and pulled the trigger. Instead of creating a new portal, the device sent a pulse of energy directly at the Sith Lord. The kyber crystal fragment blazed with light as the energy beam struck Vader, momentarily disrupting his force grip. Rick dropped to the ground, gasping for air. Interesting. The crystal responds to intention. It converted the portal energy into a directed force pulse. He grinned despite the danger. Science for the win. Vader recovered quickly, his anger manifesting as a wave of dark force energy that rippled through the ruins. Your resistance is futile. The power you wield is nothing compared to the dark side. Oh yeah? Let's test that hypothesis. Rick fired again, the portal gun emitting another pulse of energy. This time, Vader was ready. He caught the energy with his lightsaber, absorbing it into the blade, which glowed with unusual brightness. With a gesture, he sent the energy back at Rick, who dove behind a fallen column just in time. Okay, new hypothesis, Rick muttered to himself. Lightsabers can absorb and redirect force energy. Noted. The standoff was interrupted by a sudden change in the portal to the world between worlds. It pulsed with increased intensity, the light within shifting from white to a swirling mixture of blue and gold. A figure appeared in the gateway, not Obi-Wan returning, but a new presence. What the? Rick stared in disbelief as a small, green being emerged from the portal. Ancient and diminutive, yet radiating power that made even Vader halt his advance. Master Yoda, Vader said, his voice reflecting surprise despite the vocal modulator. The ancient Jedi Master stood before the portal, leaning on his Gaimer stick, his large eyes taking in the scene with calm wisdom. Unexpected this meeting is. Prepared for it I am not. Rick looked between the two Force users, understanding the significance of the moment. I think I might have accidentally broken the timeline here. Yoda's ears twitched as he turned to Rick. Broken, the timeline is not. Fluid, it always was. Converging, many paths now are. Great. Cryptic frog wisdom, just what we needed. Rick checked his scanner, which was displaying increasingly erratic readings. The portal's becoming more unstable. The presence of two extremely high-level Force users is amplifying the energy fluctuations. Vader took another step forward, his lightsaber raised. Your presence changes nothing, old master. Today, the last of the Jedi will fall. Yoda's expression remained serene. Fall, I might. End the Jedi will not. He turned to Rick. Close the portal you must. Dangerous. It has become. Drawing too much Force energy, it is. I'm trying, Rick protested, but it's self-sustaining now. The only way to close it would be to... His eyes widened as an idea struck him. To overload it from both sides simultaneously. Yoda nodded, understanding immediately. Help you, I will. Vader seemed to realize what they were planning. He lunged forward, lightsaber arcing toward Yoda. The ancient Jedi responded with astonishing speed, drawing his own lightsaber and meeting Vader's attack with a precise parry. Run, you should, Yoda called to Lyra and Galen. Find Kenobi and Mos Eisley. Important, your survival is. The rebels hesitated only briefly before following his instruction, disappearing into the desert with the astromech droid. Rick worked frantically with his scanner, making calculations while Yoda and Vader engaged in a lightsaber duel that defied physics. The two Force users moved with impossible speed and precision, their weapons clashing in bursts of energy that illuminated the ancient ruins. I need to reconfigure the portal gun to emit an inverted quantum frequency, Rick muttered to himself. Cancel out the portal's resonance pattern. The duel between Yoda and Vader intensified. Though the ancient Jedi Master was holding his own, it was clear that Vader's raw power and younger body gave him advantages that Yoda's experience and skill could only partially counter. Any time now with that. Portal solution, Rick called out, ducking as a deflected Force push sent debris flying over his head. Yoda disengaged from Vader momentarily, leaping back with agility that belied his age. Ready soon, are you? Almost. Rick made a final adjustment to his portal gun. I need to get closer to the portal. Yoda nodded. Cover you I will. The Jedi Master unleashed a Force push of tremendous power, sending Vader sliding backward across the stone platform. In that moment, Rick sprinted toward the portal gun aimed at its center. When I fire, you need to hit it with everything you've got from your side, Rick shouted to Yoda. The ancient Jedi nodded, gathering the Force around him like a cloak of light. Vader recovered and charged forward, his rage manifesting as crackling energy around his lightsaber. You will not escape. Rick reached the portal and pulled the trigger on his reconfigured portal gun. It emitted a beam of inverted energy directly into the center of the gateway. Simultaneously, Yoda thrust his hands forward, channeling a massive surge of force energy into the same point. The portal began to collapse, its edges curling inward, the light within shifting through spectrums visible and invisible. The kyber crystal in Rick's portal gun vibrated violently, threatening to shatter from the strain. "It's working!" Rick shouted over the rising whine of collapsing dimensional energy. "Keep it up!" Vader, recognizing the danger, abandoned his attack on Yoda and instead focused on Rick. The Sith Lord extended his hand, using the Force to try and pull the portal gun away. Rick felt the device being yanked from his grip, but held on desperately. "Not this time, Vader. I'm kind of attached to this thing." The portal gun remained in his hands, but the strain of resisting Vader's force pull was making it difficult to maintain the inverted energy beam. Yoda saw Rick's predicament and shifted his focus. With one hand, he continued channeling energy into the collapsing portal. With the other, he countered Vader's force pull, creating a momentary stalemate that allowed Rick to maintain his position. The portal shrank further, energy crackling around its diminishing circumference. Rick's scanner showed the quantum field becoming increasingly unstable. "It's gonna blow," Rick warned. "We need to get clear." Yoda nodded, but did not retreat. "Hold back the explosion. I will. Escape. You must." "Are you insane?" Rick shouted. "Even you can't contain an interdimensional quantum implosion." The ancient Jedi smiled. "The Force, stronger than quantum physics. It is." Rick wanted to argue further, but the readings on his scanner warned him there was no time. The portal had shrunk to the size of a dinner plate, but the energy it contained had nowhere to go but outward. "Your funeral," he muttered, backing away from the collapsing portal. "Actually, forget I said that. Bad choice of words." Vader seemed to sense the impending explosion as well. The Sith Lord ceased his attack and retreated toward his ship, recognizing that even his power might not protect him from what was coming. As Rick reached what he hoped was a safe distance, he looked back to see Yoda standing calmly before the now tiny portal, hands raised, the Force flowing through him like a conduit. The ancient Jedi appeared to be drawing the chaotic energy into himself, containing it, transforming it. The portal collapsed with a sound like reality itself tearing. A shockwave of Force energy erupted outward, but instead of the devastating explosion Rick had expected, the energy curved and flowed, directed by Yoda's will, into harmless patterns that dissipated into the desert air. When the light faded, Yoda stood alone on the platform, leaning heavily on his stick, visibly exhausted but alive. Vader's ship was already disappearing into the sky, the Sith Lord making a tactical retreat rather than facing both a Jedi Master and an unpredictable dimensional anomaly. Rick approached cautiously, portal gun still in hand. "That was impossible. You contained a quantum implosion through sheer force of will." Yoda looked up at him, his ancient eyes reflecting wisdom beyond mortal understanding. "Impossible, nothing is. Only our understanding, limited, is." Yeah, more fortune cookie wisdom. But there was less bite in Rick's sarcasm now, something like reluctant respect in his voice. "So what now? Obi-Wan's gone who knows where through a portal that no longer exists. Vader's probably calling for reinforcements, and I'm still stuck in this dimension." "Gone. Obi-Wan is not," Yoda said, waiting in Mos Eisley. "He is. The world between worlds. Strange paths it has. Enter in one time and place, exit in another, you can." Rick processed this information. "So he went in here and came out. Somewhere else? Someone else?" He checked his scanner. "That violates at least 12 laws of quantum physics, but then again, so does most of what I've seen in this universe." Yoda nodded. "Find him. You must. Important. Your meeting is. Shaped by it, the future will be. Great. More destiny talk." Rick pocketed his scanner and examined his portal gun. The kyber crystal was dim now, its energy depleted. My ride's out of juice again. Looks like I'm walking to Mos Eisley. Walk with you I will, Yoda said. Much to discuss we have. Rick raised an eyebrow. You want to walk across a desert with me? Don't you have important Jedi business somewhere else? A swamp to hide in, maybe? The ancient Jedi chuckled. In exile I am. Nowhere to be. I have. He began walking, his small form moving with surprising speed across the sand. Questions you have. Answers I might. Rick hesitated, then fell into step beside the diminutive Jedi Master. Fine. But I'm not carrying you in a backpack while you spout philosophical nonsense. Carry me. You will not need to, Yoda assured him with a hint of amusement. Keep up with me, can you? As they made their way across the desert toward Mos Eisley, an unlikely pair united by circumstance, Rick found himself reluctantly intrigued by the ancient being beside him. Here was a creature who had manipulated energy in ways that defied Rick's scientific understanding, not through technology, but through what this universe called the Force. So this Force of yours, Rick began, curiosity overcoming his usual dismissiveness. It's not just telekinesis and mind tricks, is it? What you did back there with the portal energy, that was something else entirely. Yoda walked in silence for a moment, considering his response. The Force, not mine it is. Through all things it flows. Connect everything it does. He glanced up at Rick. Your science, not wrong it is. Incomplete only. Incomplete how? Rick's scientific mind couldn't resist the puzzle. Matter, energy, space, time study these, your science does. But the connections between them, the purpose, the will, these it does not see. Yoda tapped in his chest. Life creates the Force, makes it grow. Intentions, emotions, choices shape the Force. They do. Rick frowned. You're saying consciousness affects quantum fields directly? That intention can influence physical reality at a fundamental level. He considered this. There are theories about observer effects in quantum mechanics, but nothing on the scale you're describing. In your dimension, perhaps not, Yoda acknowledged. Different, each reality is, different rules, different balances. This gave Rick pause. You know about the multiverse? About other dimensions? Yoda nodded. Glimpses the Jedi have had. Through deep meditation, other possibilities seen, we have. But travel between them? Never achieved, until you came. As they continued their journey, Rick explained the principles of his portal technology, translating complex interdimensional physics into terms Yoda might understand. To his surprise, the ancient Jedi followed his explanations with remarkable comprehension, occasionally asking questions that revealed insight beyond what Rick would have expected from a being of this universe. In turn, Yoda explained the Jedi understanding of the Force not as mysticism, but as a genuine attempt to comprehend a natural phenomenon through centuries of observation and experience. Rick found himself drawing parallels between Jedi techniques and scientific principles from various dimensions he had visited, his mind making connections that bridged the gap between his science and Yoda's Force. By the time the spaceport of Mos Eisley appeared on the horizon, Rick had developed, if not respect, then at least a grudging acknowledgement that this universe's Force represented a genuine phenomenon worthy of scientific investigation. And Yoda had gained new perspectives on the Force through Rick's scientific frameworks, finding value in the dimensional traveler's unorthodox viewpoints. There it is, Rick said, nodding toward the distant settlement. Wretched hive of scum and villainy, if I remember the description correctly. Accurate, that is, Yoda agreed. Careful, we must be. Imperial spies, everywhere they are. Rick examined his portal gun as they walked. The kyber crystals recharging slowly, absorbing ambient Force energy. Given enough time, I might be able to generate another portal, but I need a lab to make proper calibrations. Find help in Mos Eisley, we may, Yoda said. Friends of the Jedi, still exist they do, hidden though they are. As they approached the outskirts of the spaceport, Yoda stopped suddenly. "Sense Obi-Wan?" "I do." "And others?" "In danger, they may be." Rick checked his scanner. "I'm picking up Imperial comm frequencies, stormtroopers, and lots of them." He frowned at the readings. "They're converging on a location in the center of town, some kind of cantina. Chalmun's Cantina." Yoda identified it. "Where Obi-Wan told your friends to go." "Great. So they walked right into an Imperial trap." Rick adjusted his scanner. "But why would the Empire stake out some random cantina?" "Random, it is not," Yoda explained. "Known meeting place for those seeking discreet transport off-planet. It is. Watching it, the Empire often is." Rick considered their options. "We need a distraction. Something to draw the stormtroopers away from the cantina so Obi-Wan and the others can escape." Yoda nodded in agreement. "Create chaos elsewhere, we must." "Chaos is my specialty," Rick said with a grin. He examined his portal gun. "Not enough power for a full portal yet, but maybe enough for something smaller." He made some adjustments to the device. "If I can create a miniature interdimensional rift at the Imperial landing bay, it might be enough to trigger their sensors and draw their forces away from the cantina." "Help you, I will," Yoda offered. "Amplify the effect, I can." Rick nodded. "Let's find a good vantage point first. Somewhere we can see both the landing bay and the cantina." They made their way through the dusty back alleys of Mos Eisley, avoiding Imperial patrols. The spaceport was crawling with stormtroopers, more than would be normal for such a remote outpost. "Vader must have called in every available unit after our little light show in the desert," Rick observed. "He really wants me and my tech." They found a suitable position on a rooftop overlooking both the main Imperial facility and, in the distance, Chalmun's Cantina. Through his scanner, Rick could see a heavy stormtrooper presence surrounding the cantina, though they had not yet moved in. "They're waiting for something," he muttered. "Or someone. For Vader, they wait," Yoda said grimly. "Coming he is. Sense him I can." Rick worked quickly, recalibrating his portal gun for a controlled, localized effect. "Okay, here's the plan. I'll create a small dimensional rift over the Imperial facility, just enough to set off their sensors and make them think we're trying to use portal technology there. You use your Force mojo to amplify the signature, make it look like a bigger deal than it is." "And then?" Yoda prompted. "Then we loop around to the cantina while the stormtroopers are distracted, find Obi-Wan and the others, and get the hell out of Dodge." Rick paused. Figure of speech. "It means leave quickly." Yoda nodded. "Understand, I do. Slang in many cultures. Encountered I have." Rick aimed his portal gun at the Imperial facility and pulled the trigger. A tiny rift appeared above the landing bay, barely visible to the naked eye, but emitting an energy signature that his scanner could detect clearly. Yoda closed his eyes and extended a three-fingered hand toward the disturbance. Immediately, the energy readings on Rick's scanner multiplied exponentially. "It's working!" Rick exclaimed. "They're picking it up. Look!" Stormtroopers were pouring out of buildings throughout Mos Eisley, converging on the landing bay. Speeders and transports abandoned their positions near the cantina, racing toward the new threat. "Nice job, Green Bean," Rick said, genuinely impressed. "Now let's move." They descended from the rooftop and made their way toward the cantina, keeping to shadows and alleyways. The streets were emptier now, most of the Imperial forces having responded to their diversion. "We don't have much time," Rick warned as they approached Chalmun's. "Once they realize it's a false alarm, they'll be back." "Hurry, we must," Yoda agreed, but cautious also. They reached the cantina's back entrance just as a group was emerging. Obi-Wan, Lyra, Galen, the astromech droid, and a rugged-looking man in a black vest whom Rick recognized instantly. "Han Solo," he muttered. "Of course." If anyone's ship could do the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs, it would be in this story. Obi-Wan spotted them first. Master Yoda. His voice reflected surprise and profound relief. I did not expect to find you here. Long story it is, Yoda replied. Time for it now. We do not have. Han Solo looked between the two Jedi with undisguised skepticism. Another one. Listen, I agreed to transport you and these two plus their droid. I didn't sign up for a Jedi convention. Relax, Captain Solo, Rick interjected. We're all going to the same place away from here. The Empire's about to be all over this cantina like flies on a bantha carcass. Han's eyes narrowed. How do you know my name? Lucky guess, Rick said dismissively. You've got the whole scruffy-looking nerf herder vibe going on. Who's scruffy-looking? Han protested automatically. Obi-Wan intervened before the exchange could escalate. Our diversion won't last long. We must reach your ship quickly, Captain Solo. The Falcon's in Docking Bay 94, Han said, but the main streets are too exposed. Rick checked his scanner. Imperial forces are still concentrated at the landing bay, but they're starting to realize it's a false alarm. We've got maybe 10 minutes before they return. Service, tunnels, Galen suggested. Most of these old spaceports have maintenance passages running beneath the streets. Han nodded. The kid's right. There's an access point in the alley. Come on. They followed Han to a rusted hatch half hidden behind refuse bins. The smuggler punched a code into the ancient keypad, and the hatch slid open with a protesting groan of metal. Not exactly luxury transport, Han commented as they descended into the dimly lit passage, but it beats Imperial entanglements. The tunnels were cramped and foul-smelling, forcing them to move in single file through the darkness. The astromech droid had the most difficulty, its wheels struggling with the uneven floor, but between Galen's guidance and occasional force assists from Yoda, it managed to keep pace. As they navigated the labyrinth beneath Mos Eisley, Rick found himself walking alongside Obi-Wan. The Jedi Master had a distant look in his eyes, as if still processing what he had seen in the world between worlds. So, Rick ventured, keeping his voice low, find anything interesting on your interdimensional field trip? Obi-Wan glanced at him. I saw possibilities, paths not taken, choices yet to be made. His gaze was penetrating. And I saw the truth of what you are, Rick Sanchez. Yeah? And what am I, exactly? Rick's tone was challenging, but there was uncharacteristic wariness in his eyes. A man who has seen too much, Obi-Wan said softly, who hides his pain behind cynicism and alcohol, who runs from attachment because he has lost too many times. Rick's expression hardened. Save the psychoanalysis, Kenobi. You don't know me. Perhaps not, Obi-Wan conceded, but I know that you could have left at any time. Your portal device had enough power after absorbing energy from the holocron, yet you stayed to help us. I stayed because Vader would have taken my tech if I'd tried to leave, Rick countered. Pure self-interest. Obi-Wan smiled slightly. If you insist. They fell, silent as Han led them through a final turn in the tunnels. Ahead, a shaft of light indicated another access hatch. The smuggler climbed a rusted ladder and peered through a small viewport. Docking Bay 94 is just across the street, he reported. No stormtroopers in sight, but that won't last. We need to move fast and quiet. One by one, they emerged from the tunnel into a narrow alley. The twin suns of Tatooine were high overhead, casting harsh light and sharp shadows across the dusty street. Han led them at a brisk pace toward a large circular entrance carved into the sandstone. As they approached the docking bay, Rick's scanner began to beep softly. He checked the readings and cursed under his breath. Imperial forces regrouping, he warned. They're heading this way. How much time? Han asked. Minutes, Rick replied. Maybe less. They quickened their pace, reaching the entrance to Docking Bay 94. Inside, a battered freighter sat on the landing pad, its aged and modified hull, a testament to years of hard use and hasty repairs. There she is, Han announced with evident pride. The Millennium Falcon. She may not look like much, but she's got it where it counts. Rick eyed the ship with scientific curiosity. Heavily modified YT-1300 light freighter. Corellian Engineering Corporation. Sublight engines upgraded beyond factory specs. Interesting. Han gave him a suspicious look. How do you know so much about my ship? Let's just say I've seen her in action, Rick replied cryptically. Now let's move before the Empire's welcome party arrives. They hurried across the docking bay toward the Falcon's lowered ramp. A large Wookiee appeared at the top, growling urgently. I see them, Chewie, Han called back. Get her fired up, we're leaving. Rick paused at the base of the ramp, looking back toward the entrance of the docking bay. His scanner was beeping more insistently now. They're here, he announced, multiple signatures converging on our position. Obi-Wan turned to him. Come, Rick. There's no time to waste. Rick hesitated. Actually, I think this is where we part ways. What? Lyra exclaimed. After everything, you're just going to stay behind? Not exactly. Rick held up his portal gun. The Kyber crystals absorbed enough ambient force energy for one more portal. Not enough to get me home, but enough to get me somewhere else in this galaxy. Somewhere I can find the components I need to properly fix this thing. Obi-Wan studied him intently. You have a destination in mind. It wasn't a question. Rick nodded. Let's just say I know where to find technology advanced enough for my purposes, and it's not with the Rebellion or the Empire. Camino, Obi-Wan guessed. Rick looked surprised. How did you... The world between worlds shows many things, the Jedi replied, including possibilities. The sound of booted feet echoed from the entrance. Stormtroopers were moments away. You must go, now, Rick urged them. I'll cover your escape. Lyra stepped forward and, to Rick's evident discomfort, hugged him briefly. Thank you. For everything. Yeah, don't get sentimental on me, Rick muttered, but there was less bite in his voice than usual. Galen extended a hand, which Rick shook. If you ever find your way to the Rebellion, I'll be sure to avoid it. Rick finished for him, but with a hint of a smile. Obi-Wan and Yoda exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between the Jedi Masters. Then, Obi-Wan approached Rick. The Force works in mysterious ways, Rick Sanchez. Our meeting was not by chance. Spare me the destiny speech, Rick said. It was quantum probability, nothing more. Nevertheless, Obi-Wan continued, you have changed things by your presence here. The future is uncertain now. Isn't that a good thing? Rick asked. Breaking predestined paths, creating new possibilities. Obi-Wan smiled. Perhaps it is. Yoda approached last, looking up at Rick with ancient eyes that had seen millennia of history. Remember what learned here, you will. When returned to your dimension, you do. What? That sufficiently advanced science is indistinguishable from magic. Already knew that one, Rick replied. Yoda shook his head. No. That alone. Truly alone. No being is. Connected through the Force, through quantum entanglement, through the choices we make, all are we. The philosophical observation struck closer to home than Rick cared to admit. He covered his discomfort with a dismissive wave. Yeah, well, good luck with your rebellion against the evil Empire. Try not to get Death-starred. The stormtrooper footsteps were at the entrance now. Han called urgently from the top of the ramp. Whatever goodbyes you're saying, make it quick, we're out of time. Obi-Wan and Yoda hurried up the ramp, followed by Lyra, Galen, and the astromech droid. The ramp began to close as the Falcon's engines roared to life, stirring up clouds of dust and sand. Rick turned to face the entrance. Just as the first stormtroopers appeared, he aimed his portal gun at them with a reckless grin. Hey, bucketheads, looking for me? The stormtroopers raised their blasters, but before they could fire, Rick activated his portal gun. A swirling green gateway opened beside him. He gave a mock salute to the confused Imperials, then stepped through. The portal closed with a pop of displaced air, leaving the stormtroopers firing at empty space as the Millennium Falcon rose above the docking bay and shot into the sky. On the distant ocean world of Camino, where perpetual storms lashed at gleaming white facilities rising from the endless sea, a portal opened in an abandoned cloning laboratory. Rick stepped through, immediately assessing his surroundings with scientific precision. "Perfect," he murmured, taking in the advanced technology. "This'll do nicely." He set his portal gun and scanner on a pristine white workstation and began examining the Kaminoan equipment. His scientific mind was already adapting their cloning technology concepts to his interdimensional needs, seeing applications and possibilities the original designers had never imagined. As he worked, the kyber crystal fragment in his portal gun pulsed gently, as if in response to his thoughts. Rick paused, studying it with newfound respect. "Maybe there is something to this Force business after all," he admitted to the empty laboratory. "At the very least, it's a fascinating quantum field effect unique to this dimension." Hours stretched into days as Rick repurposed Kaminoan technology to his needs, creating a hybrid device that combined his portal gun with principles derived from their genetic manipulation equipment. The result was unlike anything that had existed in either reality, a perfect fusion of interdimensional science and the unique physics of the Star Wars universe. When at last he activated the completed device, the portal that formed was stable and precise, its green energy intermixed with the blue glow of kyber crystal resonance. Through it, Rick could see his own garage workshop, exactly as he had left it before his unplanned journey into this dimension. He hesitated at the threshold, looking back at the laboratory he had transformed. Part of him, the scientist, the explorer, was reluctant to leave a universe with such unique properties, with a force that defied his previous understanding of reality. "I could stay," he mused aloud. "Study this force phenomenon properly, prove once and for all it's just exotic quantum physics, not mystical mumbo-jumbo." But even as he spoke, he knew he wouldn't stay. There were infinite realities to explore, infinite sciences to master, and somewhere out there were the few people who actually mattered to him, despite his best efforts to pretend otherwise. Rick stepped through the portal, the gateway closing behind him. But the kyber crystal fragment remained integrated into his portal gun, a small piece of that distant galaxy now, permanently part of his technology. In his garage, Rick set the modified portal gun on his workbench and reached for a bottle he kept hidden beneath a false panel. As he took a long drink, his eyes fell on a small display he'd added to the portal gun, one that showed energy readings across dimensions. The indicator for the Star Wars universe glowed steadily, a constant reminder of a reality where science and what they called the Force existed in balance. "Balance," Rick muttered, the word feeling strange on his lips. Maybe the old green gremlin had a point after all. He took another drink and began sketching new schematics, his mind already racing with applications for what he'd learned. The Force might be unique to that dimension, but its principles could be adapted, expanded upon. The possibilities were endless. And if, occasionally, when working with his portal gun, Rick found himself momentarily attuned to something beyond normal science, a sense of connection to the infinite realities he traveled between, he attributed it to quantum field effects, not to any mystical force. But he never quite managed to convince himself entirely,